Well, thanks a lot for having me to demo. We're going to demo tonight. Okay, I'm going to make these little boxes. They have a lid that's inset into a mortise, and the ways that you can design these, you can design these that so the outside edge is a little proud of the lid, or you can have a continuous lid here. And I use I make them. These are made with the same material out of one piece of material, so you can get a grain match that goes across the top of the box. And the way I got started with these was with a hands-on demo, a hands-on session with Benoit Everly about 10 years ago. And one of the features of that class was we're going to do this with a skew. And I think somebody asked me to do a demo about 3 or 4 months ago, and I decided to come up with this and try to duplicate that using a skew. It's a really good practice, a good piece to be using a skew because it's an end grain, or it's spindle orientation with a grain, and it is just simply a bead. And so it's good practice. And so I can pass these around to him if you want. Hand it to him. Okay. So that's the box. So as I was working on preparing this demo, uh, I learned some things about using the skew, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes just sharing what I learned. Hopefully this will be new information for people or not. But if you compare a spindle gouge to a skew has a fairly acute angle. This one's got this one has those two. Talk to those two. Okay, this one has about a 35 degree included angle, which means there's half of that on one side. And I usually have my spindle gouges with about a 35 degree angle. And I'll show you why that makes a difference in a minute. So the other thing that I've learned is people tell you to do beads and cove sticks, where you have a bead, cove. And I learned this from Kip Christensen that sometimes it's better to just do coves, be half a bead on one side and half a bead on the other, so you get your muscle memory. And so we'll start with this. So if I want to put a bead on the end of this, you've got to start. If I'm going to get a cut, you notice, and I'm going to get a catch. Okay. So I'm going to get the key cut, and I'm going to I'm really turning my wrist, you know, to make this bead. So if I were using a spindle gouge, let me do it one more time. So this is a 15-degree bevel. You really want to keep that bevel just floating over the wood as it makes it tough. And it's essentially the same thing with the spindle gouge, except that this is a 35-degree angle. So to finish this cut, finish the bead, the handle has to be way over here. If you start the bead over here, well, you're making two motions all at once, and you extend the cut over here. If I go back to this view and move that handle around that far, I'm going to get a catch, just like that. So that's kind of the message I got about using the skew is it takes a lot of practice, and you really have to pay attention to where the bevel is with respect to the wood. And there's a huge difference between the skew and the spindle gouge, but they both work all about the same. In some ways, once you get used to the skew, it's a lot easier because you're not moving so much laterally. So That's in a nutshell some of the stuff I learned about fuse when I was preparing for this. Hopefully that might be helpful for somebody. Any questions at all? Let me know if you have any questions as we go on. So this is an SC2 record SC2 chuck. One of my favorite chucks. For small work. Yeah, I'm not sure what this wood is exactly. I think it might be it looks a bit like koa, but I'm not sure if it's really koa.
Pretty wood.
It's a pretty wood. I think it a lot. You know, I use tailstock support whenever I can. So I just want to turn this up. Now I want to go to mark out places for the length of the finial of the box. I think it was close to the lid, and then about where the bottom is going to be. And I essentially I really want the bottom of the box to be about twice as long as the finial. I'm just going to list the material. Peeling probably have it is peeled into the efficient tile. Use that material right up in that area for the finial. And then we just area here for the lid. And then maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit more. The less material you use for the lid, the better your grain match will be. So, what I want to do is start. I'm trying to set the wall thickness to the box here. So I'm going to just start by doing just a slight inward cut here. And I'm going to look to see how much wall thickness I have. I don't want too much. That's what the diameter of the lid, that's the lid's going to be. Now I'll need this. I'll need to pare that off. So I'll probably cut it off about there. And I want to put a little lift into the lid. So I think I'll use my spoon to do it. Reduce the diameter of that pinroll. And you get rid of that tail flap. I really want to reduce the diameter, get something smaller. Get it down to the size I want it to go to top of the. Need to remove enough of there was a divot in there from the tail stock. And then at this point, I'm going to shave this with a little bit of a curve. We have a continuous curve on this with the length of the finial. Um, I've got a beading tool. To put a little bead in there. So this is made by D-Way, and it's essentially a scraper, and it needs to be introduced to the wood at about the center rotation is about at about that angle there, and it will make a perfect bead for me. Could do this with a spindle gouge or a skew, but this is a lot easier. Nice clean bead. And then what I do is do that for about top of the bead gets wrong. And then I can take my spindle gouge and do that. Make a little bit. And essentially, I've got at the top of the lid is turned. I'm going to make that a little thicker, so I'll take a little bit more off that box. Use the burning tool. So with the burning tool, I can just burning tool, I can just make it the width, the thickness that I want. And then cover area, park that on. And that's to the other. Reshape that box a little bit more. All I'm doing here is making sure I have I want a fairly thin wall at the top here. So I just put it at lower. So at this point, I really want to finish. I'm going to put a finish on the top of this piece here. So I got to sand it. And going through the sandpaper right at this point. 150. Do works up at 150. And here, when they're sanding, you want to be careful that if you have lines in there that you want to be sharp, you don't want to be sanding those lines. So you really want to stay around where this bead, where something against the bead, you want to use the edge of your sandpaper to, not touching the bead. And I'll If you want this to be a sharp edge here, you want to be careful to stay away from that edge. You should slow it down a bit for sanding. And the edge, I'm not going to be too careful, might really spend a lot more time with this if you were at home not doing a demo, but this will work. That was 220, 320. 400. And a little paper towel. With the dust on. Okay, so I'm just going to dust it off a bit. And then this is a fine Yorkshire grit. It has beeswax, mineral oil, and what do they call abrasive polish, fine abrasive polish. This product comes in a coarser version, which I suppose at some point you could do the coarse one first, and then the fine one. But I find it works just fine, starting with this finer version. Now I start with it relatively slow, and I'm using I can feel the grit working on this, so I want the grit to do the work to smooth out the wood. And once that grit starts kind of dissolving and getting smoother and smoother, then I can speed it up and polish it with the same material here. And it makes it reasonably easy, good finish. And then I also, at one of the other many demonstrations I was at, somebody was using this stuff called Alfie Shine, and it's a resin enhanced hard wax polish. So I don't know exactly what that means, resin enhanced, but it smells really good. And it wasn't that expensive the money I was on, so I'm just going to put that on. And I think if you apply hard wax, the best way to do that is to put it on and let it sit for 15 minutes or so, and let it harden, and then polish it. To 15 minutes to do that. So I'm just going to polish this at a higher speed. Get it nice and hot. And now that pretty much is the lid is finished on the top. Don't want to drop these things in your chips. And I want to pair that off. So I'm just going to use my thin party tool. And I'm going to saw that rest of it off. I'll show you how I made it. Later I will finish the bottom of this. Yeah. I'll show you how to do that till afternoon. And just holding the caliper, holding the lid in the caliper. So we have a reference size. want to be scribing this right at the center so it can be the most accurate. I'm going to scribe on this edge, this end of the caliper, and leave this one off so I don't touch the wood with that. And then there's a gap at where it's at. See, okay, I know that's going to be too small. So I'm going to just go up to that line, go just past that line. And I need to clear up some material. And this is end grain material. So a good way to hollow end grain is with a spindle gouge. You could put a drill chuck on here and drill a hole and stuff, but I don't really I have this in my hand here. It works perfectly well to clear out end grain material. And the way you do that is you have the fluid about 45 degrees toward you, and you just push it in at the center, pull it toward you. And you really just coming, fibers are going this way, so you're cutting right straight through the fibers, but pulling it out through the. I just want to give myself a little clearance there. I'm staying way away from the line. I need to make a wedge for the lid to sit on. And so I have a tool that was designed by Cindy Georgia, but I copied it. Essentially, it's a negative rib scraper with a right angle. So it's got a shallow angle on the top of the tool here, and then a steeper angle on this side and that side. It'll cut on the end or the side. So I can just pull it toward me toward that line. And I'm going to stop and leave the line in place. And then that will allow me to check my fit with my lid. And I expected that not to fit. It's not being too big. Or the lid's too large. The recess is too small. And I want to sneak up on that. This is going to be the final fit for this lid because I don't really have to do anything else to it. And I personally like to have a lid that you can lift off the box without the box coming out. Other people really like to have a fit where you have to hold the box and pull the lid on. Okay, that's probably not a bad fit for this lid. You want it so it goes in there, but not just, you don't want it rattling around. But it's not deep enough, in my opinion, so I'm going to narrow that wedge a little bit. And then I'm going to make it deeper. have another, if you want a little different design, you can leave this wall a little thicker and then make this a real tight fit and then shape the top of the box so it's one continuous line and you don't see this line. This design has a little bit of, wants the edges to be a little proud of the lid. Your work is gonna, these little subtle things that you think about when you're making these things or designing them, is will make, just subtle little things make huge differences in appearance. And I need to take a little bit more out of the film here. Sitting down. One, just a little more. Okay, that's probably good. Like that. Well, I'm going to thin that wall out just a little bit. And I've got this in my hand, should work fine. I'm just going to use the tape this down and fill that. We'll go with that. Now I need to do the other side of the box. So actually I'm going to end up with this box a little bit longer than I usually come. And all I'm doing is I'm just doing a bead down here. And I really want, as I want this to be a continuous curve, and the way I achieve that is I start my bead here, go all the way around, start the bead a little higher up, all the way around, and now move this out a little bit. Here. I'm going to take off a little bit here with my thin particle tool. Get this around here like that. And get my heating tool on the bead down here. Oops. Okay. Okay. And I believe, okay. I do a little finish hollow in this out. So I could get this a little Harbor Freight depth gauge. I'm going to just put this, I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch from that bead to the bottom. my depth gauge. I'm going to mark my spindle gouge to that depth. That's the second line, going up deeper only. And I'm gonna hollow, make a hole down the middle, that's that deep. So I can put the, okay. Same process, go down the middle and clear it out a little bit. I just want, yeah, just clear it down there. Stand over the top here and let's see how far you've got to go. All right. Now I've set the depth. And just get rid of the material. I'm going to go back to my scraper that I made. Get rid of some of the material out here. All right. So I just need to
You can shut it inside.
what's that?
That's good.
That'll work.
All right. So I'm just going to go pick that leg. There you go. And then I made the other, I put a different shape on the other side of this tool, so I double duty it. It helped me get it on the corner on the bottom. All right, that's probably good right now. There's still a few spots to get rid of. Smooth out. I'm going to move this light. This is in the way. This tool has a straight edge here with a rounded corner, so if I hit that, pull it out here, I'm staying at the side, and then I come around the bottom. And if there's a little nip in there, another half-inch negative rake scraper and put it to the bottom of the bowl and just lift it up and down, pull the nib off, and go back in there when it's running. Take a light cut across the bottom.
Without that light, we can't see anything.
You can't see it all. Okay, so
Gotta put it somewhere.
Hmm?
I said, you gotta put it somewhere.
about there.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're seeing a black hole.
So negative rake scrapers for end grain bowls are really outstanding as far as I'm concerned. Okay, I'm gonna sand this. Just gonna take a small piece of 150 grit sandpaper. Turn this speed way down. I'm gonna get rid of some of that. Just want to get this out of the way. So I just want to get, I'm not gonna do too much sanding here. A little faster than that. Yeah, it's kind of boring, so we won't do too much of that. Well, 150, 220. Three 20 and 400. Four hundred. And it's the same finishing process, but rest of the bottom for this box. Well, this abrasive paste on. If you put a little CA glue, CA finish or sanding sealer finish on there before you use this abrasive paste, then you'll get a shinier finish. And your actual finish kind of depends on the wood too. That's not too bad. And I'm gonna do the healthy shine. Any questions so far? Okay, that's this around, if you wanna smell that, it's really nice. Okay, I'm just gonna part the box off now. Well, this parting tool normally comes with a flat here. I grind this on the grinder to match the diameter of the wheel on both of these edges. So then I can just touch it on the wheel on both edges. And effectively, I get kind of a negative rake scraper here. I can kind of undercut that a little bit. And you would take a little gouge or something and take that little nib off. Or you could make a jam chuck, and then you could turn that nib off and also put some kind of embellishment on the bottom, texturing or something. So now what I've got to do is come up with a way to finish the inside of that list. So one option would be to take a block of wood like this and turn a recess in here that fits the top of the lid. So it's tight enough so you can go and turn this. And there's a reason there's a hole through there. There's two reasons. One is it holds the finial. The other one is that if it gets so tight you can't get it out, you can use a stick to poke it out the back. So that's one option. If you're doing a series of these, you start with a small one and then you work your way up to bigger and bigger, and then you can use the same block for the whole batch. But I'm going to show a different alternative. You can make a collet chuck. Are you able to see this? I don't know.
Yes, right there.
Okay, so you make a collet chuck, which basically is, it's got a tenon on it that goes in your chuck. And you make a recess in here, and that recess doesn't have to be as good, as tight a recess as that we would do on the other jam chuck. And you tighten that, you have a little slit here, tighten your chuck up and it'll hold that tight. I'll let you finish it. So I'll pass this around and show you how to make this. I actually did some of it ahead of time. Put a tenon on a piece of wood, half-inch maple. Put a tenon on here. This is kind of comes on here. So I put a tenon on here it's big enough. The tenon is big enough so that when I tighten it down, it still has room to go down, so you can compress this. And I think this probably has to be, you have to get it somewhat close, but but nowhere near as, precise as what you do with just a regular jam set. So essentially the same process. Mark the size. I'm guessing now. Too big. Too small. So you can get in between those lines. So we can just start with it in the line. Okay, ways to go. Close. Yeah, they have to do it enough. They're gonna shift it, and that's the lid of it. We got it clear over the center. Just about. Okay, I think that almost there. I'm gonna clear out the center.
One more cut.
One more cut.
Don't do it.
Words of wisdom.
All the way through. So I need to clear out a little bit of that. We have room for it to compress in there. Yeah, one more cut, I think it's gonna dig.
One more.
Yep.
What I thought.
That's one more.
And you're right, keep around.
You'll see. The difference between this and a regular jam set is you get one more cut, and a jam set, one more cut if it's too big. Here you should be able to do all right. You have one last cut. Because even if it's a little deep, it still will work. Tense moments here. There you go. Right. So now, you can put that in there. And tighten it up. So this again would be good for if you have going to do a series of these. You have start with a small, so make this for that. Increase it a little bit every time, and then it'd be bigger. I just want to finish that bottom of the lid. I just want at this point you could texture that, or you could do some lines in there, or decorate it any way you want. And then quickly go through the string finishing. Should start with the fourth one first. And usually, these grooves, I normally have like to have a air compressor to blow the grooves out. But I would know it. And then the wax. We have the wax.
How long you been making those chucks like that?
About 3 weeks, no, 3 months. Well,
I had never seen you do it, that's the reason I wondered.
well, I did it 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I hadn't done it until I started making these boxes. Yeah, actually, Mike Peace has got a video on it, and I happened to run across it, and said, well, you know, that's just another, aspect of this that I could show. You know, homemade collet shuts can be very useful for, all kinds of things, and so you can take this technique and use it for making, small tenons on a finial or icicle for an ornament or stuff like that. And if you have a series of, if you have 10 of these things and they have slight variations in diameter, they work really good for that. So it's just another technique that you can put in your toolbox, toolkit, you know.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you see something and then, you know, years go by and you haven't used it, and then all of a sudden you come up with a need for it, and then you can kind of dust off the memories and
Right.
get online and figure out what you missed and then figure it out. So, here it is. Pass it around. Any questions? Oh, okay.
Charlie,
Yeah.
I like watching you do this stuff because you do the little tiny stuff and you make it look simpler than it really is.
I think it's pretty simple.
But I know you practiced that lots.
Yeah, I practice. I've done this demo about 3 times now in the last couple of months. So, and it took me. I made about 15, 20 of the boxes before the first one. So, yeah.
I think this one would be a good one for a hot session.
Oh yeah, I think it would be. It could be easily done.
I think it has enough different techniques that we could really learn a lot by doing that.
You can take
It's
that.
small.
Yeah, you can have that box for raffle or auction, whatever you want.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, turning a bowl this big, once you do it, it's pretty simple. That right there's got a lot of different techniques it takes.
That's why I thought it'd be good for a hot session, because there's so many different things that we're doing,
Right.
like making the chuck and he's
Yeah,
doing the
I
finial,
thought-
he's
I
doing a
never thought of
box,
that.
he's
But
doing
now
a lot
I've
of
seen
different.
him do it. I done thought of 2 or 3 things I could use it.
Exactly.
There,
I was thinking of your medallions that you were
Yeah.
making.
There,
That chuck would work good for that.
Yeah.
you know, there are so many different ways to make boxes. You know, I've watched a lot of Cindy Droz. I made a lot of Cindy
From the
Droz's
camera.
finial boxes. Made a lot of Cindy Droz's finial boxes, and there's some similarities to this, but there's also some differences, and a lot of it relates to how you hold the piece that you're turning. You know, using jam chucks, or in this case, a collet chuck. But if you look at, you know, Richard Raffin and Nick Cook and Cindy Drozda and, I don't know,
Steve Jones.
Steve Joe and,
I've saw
Peggy-
Steve, I saw Steve do some chucks similar to that.
and Peggy's boxes. I saw one of the things that Peggy did on the box that I remember, I've done it myself at one point, but it looks like she's doing it all the time, where she's actually, leave it, when she pairs the lid off, what's left there is the tenon.
Yep.
And that's a little different than what we've done. So, and when I first started turning, I think I'd go watch a demo, and I'd come home and want to make the box, and then the first question is, where's the mortise? Is it in the lid or is it in the tenon? Is it in the lid or the box? Where do you put the mortise? Well, you could do it either way. Well, a lot of, but one way is you do your lid first, put the mortise in there, and then you put the tenon on the box. And the theory is that it's much easier to fit a 10 into a mortise than the other way around. But you can do it the other way. It's both ways could be done, so. And it sort of depends what you want to, how you want the box to look and things. So any other questions at all, or? No?
Very good job.
Thank you.
Good.